Hey, what's up, Spencer? My name is Everybody, and welcome back to my channel. So the month of February is finally, thankfully, over, which means that we get to talk about all of the books that I read in the past 28 days. And I sure did get a lot done because I was able to get through a total of 26 books. Some of them have been featured in past vlogs, and other ones I'm going to be talking about for the first time, so with that, let's jump right into it. So the first thing that I read in February was Spy X Family, volumes 10 through 15. And this is a manga featuring a family where the main character, Lloyd, is a spy who is undercover, and what he needs to do is infiltrate into a school, so he adopts a very young girl, a 5-year-old girl, in order to be able to say that he has a kid and kind of get in with all of the parents at this very elite school. Except little does he know that his daughter actually secretly has the power to read minds, and the woman who he ends up fake dating to be his fake daughter's fake mother is secretly an assassin. So we have this cute little family dynamic where everybody in the family is like hiding something and has a secret and has this like secondary objective to the relationship, but also at the same time they're all very genuine and love each other, and all the shenanigans that they get into is very fun and silly. I gave 5 stars all around for these volumes because this is just such a good series. It's really cute, it's adorable. I've also watched the anime, I really love it, and the reason why I was reading it this month is because I really wanted to catch back up with all of the chapters that I recently had fallen behind on, and it was a really good time, and I'm very excited to see what other things are going to happen in the future because I'm really liking what's going on right now. Lloyd pretends to be a therapist, a psychologist, and I didn't think that we'd get to actually see him treating patients, but he does, and he's very good at it for technically being somebody who does not have a license. Moving on to our next book, I read the first 2 graphic novel volumes of Witch by Alessandro Barbucci, and I gave the first volume for that 3.5 stars, and the second volume 2.5 stars. This is a very magical girl series. It is about these 5 girls who all discover that they have magical powers that have been given to them by these mystic elders, and what they need to do is protect the Veil from these interdimensional creatures that are trying to pass over into their world. This was a series that I was very, very, very much into when I was younger, and so I wanted to go back and revisit it because I'm doing a lot of stuff where I'm going back and rereading things that I used to love as a kid. And also, one of my friends is very, very into, like, very girly things. She really likes My Little Pony and Miraculous Ladybug and all that, so I figured that this would be a fun book for us to kind of, like, do a buddy read together, because this is definitely right up her alley. And I do have to say, while there was a lot of nostalgia going on when reading this, I definitely was aware of how kind of weak this story and the characters are. A lot of things in this story, like there's a lot of continuity errors, and like it's very confusing how their powers work because like sometimes they can fly, sometimes they can just turn invisible or just like project their thoughts to each other, and it's kind of very confusing about like how the rules work, because it seems like anything that they want to be able to do and need to be able to do for the plot, they just can, which is a little bit disappointing. It would be nice if it made sense and there was a little bit of like reasoning behind like, oh, I have fire powers and also telekinesis for some reason. Like, I'm not sure how that stuff works out. A lot of it was, I really felt like the author needed to slow down and take their time more with the characters and the plot, and especially by the time that I got to the second one, it seemed like the author was just really rushing through things and not even bothering to take time with stuff, because like, bad guys would just become good and good guys would just become bad, and there didn't really seem to be much rhyme or reason behind it besides just making it more compelling to read, I guess? I don't know. So while originally I was gonna try and go through and like reread the entire series, I was like so thrown off by how like weak the writing for the story was that I decided Sorry, Lila wants to play. I decided that this actually isn't going to be a series that I'm going to continue on with. The next book that I read was Daughter of Molokai E by Alan Brenner, and I gave this book 3 stars. This is the second book in a series. The first one was following a Hawaiian woman who gets diagnosed with leprosy and thus ends up having to live on the leprosy colony that they had on one of the Hawaiian islands, like back in the late 1800s and early 1900s, and it really followed her life, and especially one part where she gives birth to a daughter and the government makes her give up her daughter to the government. They're forced to adopt her out because they don't want her to accidentally give her daughter leprosy, so they decide, the government tells her that it is safer and better for the daughter's care if they were to make her get adopted as opposed to staying with her parents. And so obviously the second book follows the daughter that was given up and adopted out. She is adopted into a Japanese family, and during the time of World War II, obviously they are very affected by having to go to the internment camp and a lot of things like that. I only gave this book 3 stars because the second half of it, like the first half was pretty good. It was very interesting because it was all about the daughter, but the whole like kind of second half to third was very much like what had happened in the first book, because she does eventually end up reconnecting with her mother. So everything that was going on kind of just followed what happened in the first book, and it even ended in the same place the first book did, which was very confusing to me because I'm like, wait, if this is about the daughter's life, why are we ending the book when her mother dies? Like, why don't we continuously follow the daughter throughout her entire life? Like, this feels like a weird ending to give this book that's supposed to be about a separate, different character. There also didn't really seem to be a lot that the author was saying in terms of history. Like, I've read quite a few things about Japanese internment camps during World War II, and like, nothing that was happening in this book was anything unique. There was nothing that was being said that hadn't been said in like other books that I had read, and in many ways it really felt like the author just wanted to write like a history book and was just happening to tell the history like through these characters as opposed to giving us like a compelling story. Next up, I read the first 4 books in the Animorph series by K.A. Applegate, and obviously I have a variety of different ratings for that. The first book I gave 4.5 stars. The second I gave 3.75. The third got 4.5 stars. And the fourth only got 3.5 stars. The first 3 books that I read in this series I did as the graphic novel version, and now I have transferred over into the print version. I do have to say overall I am really liking this series. It's a really interesting series and there's definitely all sorts of stuff going on. What kind of is lacking for me is some of the characterization. Some of the characters, K.A. Applegate is doing them really well. Like, I really like Tobias and I really like Marco because they have like complex stuff going on in their lives. Tobias is stuck in his animal form for essentially the rest of his life, and so he's really struggling to deal with that, to the point that he like tries to commit suicide in one of the books. And then Marco is really struggling with the fact that his mother died a few years ago, and he feels very conflicted about doing all of this Animorph stuff because they could reasonably end up dying because they're fighting off these alien invaders, and he feels so guilty because he doesn't want to also die and leave his dad alone because he has seen how much the death of his mother has like absolutely destroyed his father. So like, I really like those 2 characters. They are really good. They are really like well thought out, whereas other characters are just so flat and have basically nothing to them and makes me kind of very disappointed, and I wish that there was a lot more going on with that. But I'm sure that as we get farther on in the book series, you know, we'll learn more about the characters, they'll become better developed people, all of that. The next book that I decided to pick up was called Into the Land of the Unicorns by Bruce Coville, and I gave this book 4 stars. This is a book that I've actually been looking for a very, very, very long time, because years and years ago, when I was like 7, somebody gave me the second book in this series, and I've been looking for this book, the first book in the series, for a very long time. And wow, like 25 years later, I have finally found it and was able to read it. So this story is about our main character, Kara, who ends up being transferred into a different world. She gets isekai'd into, no, she doesn't die, so I guess she doesn't get isekai'd, but she gets sent off into another, like, dimension where unicorns live. And it turns out that her grandmother had once lived here in this unicorn world, and there's a whole group of people who want to kill all of the unicorns, and so it is Kara and her grandmother's job to try and make sure that these unicorns don't die. I thought that this was a very enjoyable book. It was great. Even for this being like an elementary level read, it was still so much fun because there was a whole bunch of stuff going on. Like, Kara shows up in this new unicorn world and almost immediately gets murdered. And then after that, a unicorn comes and like literally stabs her in the chest. Like, there is just wild stuff happening in this book, and I thought it was great. I really gotta say, Bruce Coville is one of like my favorite childhood authors. Like, he has always written some really great stuff that even now as an adult, when I go back and rereading it and revisiting it, I am having such a fun time with it and just absolutely loving it. So I'm really glad that I decided that I was gonna pick this up and try and work through this series. Finally. The next book that I read was Bloody Soul by Sonia Patel, and I gave this book half a star. I don't think I've ever rated a book so low before. This book is about our main character, Rocky, who lives in Korea, and his father is the head gangster of like the biggest crime gang in Korea. And the very weird aspect of this story is that even though Rocky like has always known that his father is like a gang lord, when he's 16, he's surprised to find out that his dad is a gang lord and thus does bad things, like beat people up and sell drugs. It's a very confusing concept because a lot of the things that are going on in this book just would not happen. Would not at all. The author really tries to do like a enemies to lovers romance between the main character and this girl that he has been bullying for essentially his entire, like the entire time that he knew her. And it just does not work out because he has been so horrible to her. Like, he literally makes her eat cigarette butts off of the floor and like smears frog guts from biology like into her hair and has made it so that like nobody in the school is allowed to talk to her, and they come up with like a really racist nickname for her. You cannot turn that into an enemies to lovers. Like that, no, I'm fine with like enemies to lovers romance, but not in this way. There's no way that you can make, like, something like that redeemable. And also, like, if this person were to get into a relationship with him, like, I would just think that she was only doing it because she was terrified of the type of, like, abuse and other horrific stuff that she might go through if she were to turn this guy down. And not because she is genuinely, like, having feelings for him, you know? The entire structure of this book just, like, really sucked. Like, it was glaringly obvious to me that the author didn't know how to plot out a book, or how to create a character arc, or, like, do anything that you really need to, and so I was, like, extremely surprised to learn that this is actually the author's third book, because everything about it was just so weak, and so poorly planned out, and just made absolutely no sense. And like I said, I've never given a book such a low rating before, but this one was so truly horrid that it was just genuinely surprising to me that this even got published. The next book that I read was Chlorine by Jade Song, and I gave this book 2.5 stars. This book is about a girl who is a part of a swim team, and she really enjoys doing that, and she kind of believes that she is a mermaid. And a lot of it is a lot of like mermaid allegory for the things that is going on in her life. And you kind of just at first view it as her, you know, getting her strength from these mermaid stories, from just really identifying with these mermaid stories and like all of this different stuff. But then as the book goes on, you realize that, oh no, this girl like genuinely believes that she is a mermaid, and some wild stuff happens in it. And yeah, I really wish that I could have liked this book more than I did. I've seen a lot of people say that they really like it, but It Super was not for me. There were many things that happened in it that made me like super unsympathetic to the main character, where she would be complaining about things and I would be like, yeah, but you literally created this situation. Like, you were the person who made it so that all of this stuff happened. It was very difficult for me to root for her in any way, because she was really causing a lot of the issues that she was complaining about, really. And while I did like the really big twist that happens like 70% of the way through, I also was not super about like a lot of what led up to it, because I didn't think that the author had really set it up very well, and I didn't really like what happened after it, because I didn't really find the character relationships to be developed enough for the ending to really happen the way that it did. It was definitely a very interesting book, and I'm glad that I read it, but I just wish that it could have been a better book for me than what it had been. Alright, next up, I read the first 3 volumes of Kaiju number 8 by Naoya Matsumoto, and I gave these volumes 3 stars. This is a book about a world in which humanity has been being attacked by kaiju, or giant monsters, for a very long time, essentially. And so the main character really wants to be like a kaiju hunter, and so he eventually does get into the like kaiju core, whatever you want to call it. But unfortunately, something happens that makes it so that he kind of gets infected with a kaiju body. So he has the ability to transform back and forth between his human form and his kaiju form, which obviously is dangerous, because if anybody finds out that he's a kaiju, they'll just kill him, and all of this stuff. The reason why I gave these volumes 3 stars is because while the characters and the general plot is very interesting and compelling, it seemed glaringly obvious to me that the author had not actually spent any time thinking about what a world like this would actually look like and how it would have developed. In a story like Attack on Titan, which I think is very, very similar to Kaiju number 8, it is very clear, like, the way that their society works very fundamentally runs around the fact that they are being attacked by titans. You know, they have the big walls, they have their 3 different, like, core groups that go around killing titans, they know a whole bunch about titans, like, all of this stuff. It really makes sense the way that the world is because of the circumstance that humanity is in. Kaiju number 8 is not like that at all. Even though kaiju have been attacking humans for centuries at this point, we're just kind of in modern day Tokyo for some reason. There is literally no infrastructure around the fact that these kaiju attacks happen fairly frequently. Like, I want to say like weekly, bi-weekly, humans are getting attacked. And yet there are no walls, there is no, like, real alarm system. Their only defense that they have is to have a very small group of people show up and, like, shoot guns at these monsters that are so big, they are literally, like, taking out entire blocks of Tokyo in one sweep. I genuinely don't understand, like, how this world would work. It doesn't make sense, like, where the kaiju come from. Like, they're not coming in from the outside, they just show up in the middle of the city. Everybody lives in this city, even though it's getting, like, attacked all of the time. And for some reason, the city seems to be in pretty good shape, even though they're constantly getting blocks and blocks and blocks of the city destroyed all the time. I do not understand how anything in this world works. It doesn't make any sense. And I'm sure that maybe if I were to read like further on in the series, then maybe I would get like some of the world building questions that I have answered. But the way that it is right now with what I have read, like I said, I read 3 chapters, and that's something like 30 or 40 chapters. Even though I do like the characters, and I do like the concept of the story, the lack of world building is bothering me so much that I absolutely cannot do it. Alright, the next book that I read is Cross-Dressing Villainess Cecilia Sylvie by Hiroru Akikazura, and I gave this book 4 stars. This looks like it's a manga, and I picked it up from the manga section, but it's actually a light novel. So that kind of threw me off a little bit in the beginning. And what this is about is, it is about our main character, who was originally somebody who likes to stay at home a lot and play a whole bunch of dating sims. But when they tragically died, they get isekai'd. For reals this time. They get isekai'd into another world where it turns out they are living one of the dating sims that they had played. Except they're not like the main character of the dating sim, they're the main character's love rival. And so our main character is like, oh god, I've played this game so much, I know all of the endings, and in every single ending, the person who I'm playing, my character, ends up dying. So, I'm gonna die. Oh no, I don't want that. So, her plan is to dress as a boy so that then she can't be the love rival for the main character. She just wants to be like an NPC to try and like make it so that she lives that way. But of course things kind of backfire, and instead of, she's still kind of like the love rival, but now she's like the gay love rival. She keeps getting into all of these like boys love situations. It's very silly, it's very funny. The way that the author wrote this made it so that it's like a direct translation from a manga. So like people are going, "Gwa!" Or, like, if somebody does something cute, they'll, like, devolve into coughing fits. And, like, just things that don't happen in, like, real life, but are, like, manga tropes, are in this book. And so it's very funny, it's very silly, it reads like a parody. It was a lot of fun, and I absolutely love this. And the next book that I read is Birthmarked by Kara M. O'Brien, and I gave this book 2 stars. This book follows our main character, who is a 16-year-old midwife. So she works to help people give birth. And one of the things that she has to do as a midwife is the first 3 babies that are born that she cares for, she has to take them and give them to the Enclave. And the Enclave is like the group of people who live like so much better than all of the poor people that our main character is living with. And they just use these babies to try and like diversify the gene pool, I guess. And so the big conflict comes when our main character's parents get taken away by the people in the Enclave, and our main character has to go and try and rescue them, and she like discovers all of these secrets about the society, blah blah blah, you know, typical YA dystopian stuff. The reason why I gave this book 2 stars is because I think that the author was trying to go for like eugenics bad in this book, except she does it so poorly that I actually was on the bad guy's side. They didn't have the best ethics, and they weren't going around doing things like 100% properly, but I don't think that the goals that they were trying to achieve were really bad. I mean, they're trying to stop children from dying from a disease. And there's definitely other things that they could do to try and help the children, but I really don't think that trying to make it so that children don't die is such a horrible goal that we need to, like, work to stop them, and, like, we need to take down the entire system, and that it's bad enough in any way for us to even write a series about this. This is the first in a series, and it was kind of really weak for me. There was a weird part where the author was like advocating for incest. That was interesting. Yeah, I think the author like had good goals when trying to write this, but I think that she missed it like so hard, unfortunately. Like the characters really never have like really big discussions about what it means when the government like starts really thinking a lot about genetics and being overly concerned with genetics and like all of this stuff, and nobody has a conversation and nobody like really tries to challenge these ideas and be like, oh, well, why is it really bad for us to do this? The main characters just say, like, we think that this is bad and thus we should stop it. And that's kind of it. And I think that we need more than that, really. The next book that I read this month was called The Book of Three by Lloyd Alexander, and I gave this book 2 stars. This book is about our main character who is currently living as like a pig minder, a pig rearer. He takes care of a pig, and one day his pig gets out and runs away, and when he is trying to chase her down, he runs into a guy who is very well known for his heroics, and he saves a whole bunch of people, and that's who the main character wants to be. He wants to go on adventures and stuff. And through this guy, he learns that his pig is actually like a magical pig who can tell the future, and they need to go and find her so that they can stop some bad guy somehow. The plot for this book was really weak. The characterization for it was really weak. Our main character was really like a passive main character where he didn't really do anything. It seems like all the other characters were doing things for him, like making decisions and rescuing people and all sorts of stuff, and I hate it when books have main characters like that. What is the point of being a main character if you're just there and you're not actually like contributing in any way? There is no reason for it. Let's not do that. Let's just cut that guy out and we can have a book about everybody else instead, you know? So yeah, this one, not very good for me. Alright, we're getting close to the end. The next book that I read was Bob Croft, Navy diver, submariner, father of American freediving, and I gave this book 4 stars. This is not like a me book, a book that I would pick up. This was actually a book that my grandfather was very into, and he talked about it a lot in the last few years before he died. So I decided that I was going to keep the books that he had talked about a lot, and this was one of them. I decided to finally read it, and it was very interesting in many ways to read about what they used to think about freediving, you know, the limits that they thought that the human body had, and how this man came and like changed all of their perspectives on how deep down the body could go, how your body is like affected when you have 250 feet worth of water on top of you. There were some parts of it that I wasn't super into, but overall, it was a very interesting read. It was only like 100 pages, so it was really quick and easy, and I liked it in general. Second to last, I read a duology called Hooking the Captain and Retaking the Shot by Kimberly Knight and Rachel Lynn Adams. I gave this first book 3.75 stars, and I gave the second book 2 stars. This is a gay hockey romance series in which it's dual POV. One of the main characters is a guy who has just graduated from college, and he ends up running into our other main character, who is actually the captain for the Boston Bruins. And they fall in love, but they're both still in the closet, and, you know, they have this whole secret relationship going on. The first one was very fun. It had a lot of spice in it. There was all sorts of stuff happening, and I really liked it because we were all over the place. There was all sorts of stuff happening, and it was just so much fun to read about these different things, even if there were plenty of aspects of it that could have definitely spent more time developing the plot and the characters and stuff. It was still a good time. Second one, did not like it at all. Oh my goodness, this book was so boring. Nothing was happening in it, and all of the characters acted in like such an unrealistic way, and I kind of just ended up like skimming the end of it because I was so bored with what was going on, and it was just so bad in comparison to the first one, and I just didn't like it at all. Alright, and the very last book that I read in the month of February was The Maid by Nita Prose, and I gave this book 1 star. This book is about our main character, Molly, who works as a maid at a hotel, and one day everything is thrown awry when she discovers the body of the highest paying, most wealthy, influential guy who comes and frequently stays at the hotel. The reason why I gave this book 1 star is because the main selling point of this book is that the main character is autistic. And yet, Nita Prose decides to go with the most stereotypical, unrealistic, hated version of depicting autism, which is what I call the Sheldon Cooper. When we are depicting autistic people as being aliens who don't know how to speak in a human way possible, any human way, and thus, for some reason, they always talk in this really, calculated, clinical manner, instead of just, a normal-ass person. And usually, I could just write that off as an author not really knowing autistic people, not really doing the best research and all that, except that I watched a interview that Nita Prose did, where she admitted that she had spent several years working with autistic children, as a support provider. And thus, she has absolutely no excuse for why she has done such an unrealistic depiction of what autistic people are like. A large majority of Molly's quirks that she has isn't even autistic quirks. They're OCD symptoms, which is something that an autistic person can have. But if the main selling point of your book is that your main character has autism, why wouldn't you actually make them autistic? There's a lot of things that are very well known for autism that Molly doesn't really struggle with. Yeah, she misses some social cues, but she doesn't have hyperfixations. She doesn't really have, sensitivities to, noise or fabric or, anything at all. She's just, this creature who speaks in a weird way and likes to have things clean. And that's it. And I absolutely hated it. Honestly, reading this book made me embarrassed for Nita Prose, that she thinks that she did a good job depicting autistic people, and that this is a piece of work that she should be proud of, when absolutely not. Because not only is it a really bad depiction of autism, it's a really bad depiction of immigrants. We have an immigrant in the book who is extremely subservient to every single white character. His only personality trait is that he likes to clean and wash dishes. And ooh, it's just gives so much yuck. The plot was incredibly boring and had nothing to it. Molly does end up getting accused of the murder, I feel like, obviously, but she doesn't do it. But she still should have gone to jail, because she did a lot of things that messed with the police investigation, and so I feel like she definitely still should have gone to jail for interfering with a police investigation. I feel like that happens a lot in, mystery books, where the main character gets accused of doing this horrific crime, and then they prove that they didn't do this horrific crime, and then don't actually be held accountable for any of the horrific things that other, bad things that they did do. I don't know. I don't know why that's a trend, but we don't need that. Hey, I don't know. So that was everything that I read in the month of February. Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. Have you read any of these books? Did you like the books? Did you hate the books? All of that stuff. What do you got coming up in March? I'm gonna have a very busy March. We have St. Patrick's Day coming up, and I am a Irish step dancer, so I have so many shows that I need to perform for that are going to be coming up just in the next 2 weeks alone. It's going to be a lot, but it's also going to be a lot of fun, and I can't wait for it. If you made it all the way to the end of this video, thank you so much for sticking around and hanging out with me. If you like this video, make sure to like, share, and subscribe for more like it, but besides that, make sure that you stay safe and have a fantastic day. Bye.